Hello, Brooklyn, New York.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Mina Jane. I'm the director of the Ashland Public Library in Massachusetts, and I am giggling because Heather just was like, "Hello, Brooklyn." So, whoever's in the audience from Brooklyn, welcome, and everyone else. I'm so glad that you're here tonight for this very special program about the color of birds. As I just mentioned a couple seconds ago, Heather created this just for us. I was curious about it, and she was like, "Let me find out." And that was the birth of this program. So we are expecting to have a wonderful conversation. But before we get to it, I just want to say thanks to the Friends of the Ashland Public Library for supporting all of our programs. We really couldn't do it without them. Also, I'd like to thank Heather because once again, she has let us share this program with other local libraries. And of course, when libraries work together, we make magic. You can buy signed books by Heather from Aesop's Fable, which is our local indie bookstore, which we love. You can, of course, get them from your local library because they're amazing. I actually, Heather, I didn't get a chance to tell you, but like my dream is for you to create a coffee table book because whenever I see you on Instagram or anything in the pictures, I'm just amazed. So that, we'll talk to her about it. No pressure. But we are recording, and I will send out the video link after the program. If you have questions, please put them in the Q&A, which is a button at the bottom of your chat of your Zoom screen. I will be turning the chat off during Heather's slides so that you don't get distracted. But I'll turn it back on so you can chat with each other after the slides. So, Heather Wolf, thank you so much for being here. I am such a huge fan, not just from our talks, but just from like following you on social media. And since everybody's here now, I will tell you that I am going to see Heather in person live in her birding patch in Brooklyn in October. She's taking my husband and I on a little birding walk. And I am so excited because I learn so much from you every time we talk, but to see you live in action with binoculars and a camera, just can't wait.
I can't wait either,
So,
Mia.
so welcome back. And enough about me. Let's get to the birds.
Thank you so much, Mina, and thank you for suggesting this topic. As Mina mentioned, I was a little bit hesitant. I really, I admit I didn't know that much about the color of birds. I knew some basics. So basically, all summer, I've kind of created my own college course, if you want to call it that, just diving into this subject. I love it. It is so exciting. I can't wait to share with you what I've learned and the fascinating world of bird color. And I am going to go ahead and and I hope you can see that. If you cannot, do let me know. So yeah, so
Oh,
tonight, oh,
Heather,
can
I'm
you,
not seeing your slides.
oh, you aren't. Okay.
No. Okay.
Can you see them now?
Now I can see them.
Excellent. Okay. Perfect. So yeah, this talk is called The Color of Birds, Beauty and/or Evolutionary Advantage. Tonight, I'm going to be touching on several things. First of all, I want to make it fun. So we're going to just look at some colorful birds of the world from our neighborhoods and beyond. I'm going to talk about how birds get their colors, both vibrant and brilliant colors and cryptic colors and patterns. And why? Why in the world do these colors exist? What are their functions and advantages? So before we do any of that, though, I must tell you that birds see UV. They see things differently than we do. So when we're talking about, what they see and how if they perceive beauty and things like this, they're working with, a larger deck of cards here. So basically, what's termed visible light is human visible light, and we can see in this range of the spectrum, but the birds can extend down into the UV. Apparently, there are some humans that can see a little bit of UV. If you've had cataract surgery, maybe you could see a little bit of it, but really we don't know what the birds exactly are seeing. And not only can they see UV, because of these oil droplets in their retina, they can discern more colors than we can on this spectrum. So not only are they seeing UV, but they can see more blues, reds, greens, all of these colors than we can. So wow. I can't even imagine how cool that must be, because to us, it's already amazing. So now that we've got that out of the way, I do want to mention that the black-capped chickadee, this bird, it's pretty plainly colored black and white and a little bit of tan, but this bird has UV. We can't see it, but both on its black plumage on its head and the cheek patches, it shines some UV patterns likely to attract a mate and really get noticed. Okay, so that's pretty interesting. So let's look at some really colorful birds, right? Because I know you probably want to see some of these beautiful birds. Some we know and love, like the Baltimore Oriole, coming now through during migration. It's a type of blackbird. Also, the green heron. Now, I get this question a lot. Why do they call it a green heron? Because, it doesn't always look green, right? But this is because we're going to be talking about iridescence. And depending on the angle, it may not always look green. But in this little video I have, you can definitely see the green head really shows up. And when it makes a turn, you're going to see the, the green feathers on the back that are just really amazing. Let's watch this. All right. So I realized I didn't have the sound on, but that's okay. So I was hearing the beautiful music and you weren't, but you still saw the green. So that's one of the beautiful birds, many different colors going on there, chestnuts and, all sorts of shades of green. So rosette spoonbill, this is obvious in Florida a lot. I saw someone is on from Louisiana. They're in Louisiana in the Southeast. Beautiful bird. I don't have a flamingo picture, so this is the best I could do with a pink bird, but a beautiful bird. And now we're going to move out of the United States and look at some of the birds I've seen in other countries real quick. So Ecuador, this is a masked trogon. Look at that eye ring and the vibrant blues and greens and just beautiful colors. This is the Andean cock of the rock. It does have a beak somewhere hidden in there, but this is just one of those really striking birds. We're going to take a closer look at this later and see the surprising second half of its plumage. And this one's a bay-headed tanager in Colombia, really enjoying a banana. And this is wild to me because just how the colors are so separate. It's like a swatch of colors and they don't really blend in. And to me, that just seems really, really cool and unique. We all love hummingbirds. They're some of the most colorful. We have ruby-throated hummingbird here on the east, but in Arizona and Texas, you get all sorts of colorful hummingbirds. I'm going to show you Anna's hummingbird a little bit later, but this is the Talamanca hummingbird from Costa Rica. Look at that purple head. I mean, that's just, whoa. I bet that shines some UV. Now, this I would say is probably my favorite bird, like colorful bird, just because I just can't grasp the arrangement of these colors and just how wild it is and how cool and beautiful. This is a golden-browed chlorophonia. All right. This too is an amazing little bird, the Cuban toady. And this bird's only 4 inches big, long from bill tip to tail tip, right? So if that bird is that small, imagine how small the epiphyte right to the left of its feet are. Super tiny. So yes, I did. I couldn't have asked for a better pose from this Cuban toady. Red warbler in Oaxaca, wild white cheek patch there. This is also in Oaxaca. This is when people go to Oaxaca, they really want to see a rose-bellied bunting. Got a great shot here. And then, of course, we've got toucans with, the colorful bills.
Heather, can I interrupt for a second?
Sure.
Are these all pictures that you've taken?
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, thank you.
Sure. There are a couple pictures that I haven't taken that I need to illustrate some points, and I will tell you when I haven't taken them. I think there's 2 or 3. This is green honey creeper, and I think that might be the last one. But yeah, just look at that. Is that a blue or a green or a blue-green? I mean, it's just unbelievable. So how do birds get these colors, and how do they get, any color and patterns, that we see out in the wild? So there's really 2 main ways birds get colors: through pigments that absorb and reflect light, and then structural color. Basically, structures, microstructures, nanostructures that interact with light and scatter light and refract it. Okay, we're going to start out with pigments. Okay, so pigments there are dietary pigments that you get from your food. So in this case, you definitely are what you eat. So I am apparently a chocolate covered avocado because I eat avocados and dark chocolate every day. Okay, so do you think I look like a chocolate covered avocado? I don't know, but as you know, you've probably heard if you eat too many carrots, you could turn orange or yellow, right? And this is the beta carotene. It's a carotenoid pigment. If you know you've already gotten enough vitamin A and there's some leftover beta carotene in your bloodstream, it can collect on your hands or your feet, the places with the thick skin. Supposedly, it's not harmful, but it looks a little weird. So you know, get your vitamin A, but not too much vitamin A. So these carotenoids, that beta carotene is one of them. These come from the diet, and they are responsible in birds for the reds, oranges, and yellows. Okay. Not all of the reds, oranges, and yellows, but the majority of them. Okay. Because there's a very few exceptions to this rule. So when you see, you know, a cardinal or a scarlet tanager or, you know, an American goldfinch, they're getting corrupts from this is, you know, could be from or other creatures, crustaceans that have eaten, you know, algae or, you know, plants with carotenoids. So here's your American goldfinch. So when a bird, you know, eats these carotenoid pigments, they basically it's yellow. I mean, they basically get a yellow color, and that's what we're seeing here. But some birds have an enzyme which converts the yellow into red, which you see in the cardinal. But here's a goldfinch just chowing down on some seeds, getting those carotenoids. Um, you know, it's really important. You know, you could see it. You know, if they have a drabber color, it could signify that they're not getting you know that nutrition. And carotenoids, you know, aren't only for color. They have immune boosting properties, antioxidant properties, you know, these things that we hear about a lot from eating our, you know, how we have to eat our fruits and vegetables. So they're getting a lot of benefit from the carotenoids. So yeah, here's the cardinal that, you know, does convert the yellow carotenoid into red, but not always. And this is, I'm going to touch on this a little bit later. There's a study from 2022, a wild study I'm going to share with y'all that where this is not the case. Okay. I mean, and this is kind of the thing throughout the color in birds. You know, it varies. There are exceptions. Different species do different things and use pigments and, you know, foods in different ways. So that's kind of a running theme. And I couldn't resist showing this cardinal fledgling, you know. So the interesting thing about these pigments is the bird can't just like, you know, put it where they want it when they want to do that. This is when the feather is developing, you know, and it's, you know, growing out. These pigments are deposited at the base of where the feather's coming out. So like this bird can't just turn red. It's going to molt. And when it gets new feathers, hopefully it's had enough carotenoids, either by eating itself or being fed, that it will have that plumage. Cedar waxwings are berry lovers, of course, and they're called waxwings because they have these little waxy tips. Not all of them, but some of them do. And usually the older ones have the tips. And they also have yellow tail. The end of the tail there is yellow. These are from eating a lot of berries that they do. This is in London, there's the Bohemian waxwing, which looks somewhat similar, but it's got a little more carotenoid pigment deposited here. Not only in the cheek and forehead area, you see some, but also there are some feathers in between the waxy tips and the yellow that are kind of tough to see, but those do turn yellow. I think some are white in this picture, but some are yellow. And that's rowanberry, in case you're wondering what that beautiful tree is in London. Now, interestingly, this is a cedar waxwing, and if you take a look at its tail, I did not take this photo. I got this, it's a Creative Commons license, and Micklin on Flickr. But this shows something super interesting, the orange pigment in the tail of the cedar waxwing. And this is because it ate Moro's honeysuckle which is an invasive species in the eastern US. And because it's eating that, you're getting some of these. I have never seen one, but it would be pretty cool to see it. But that's what's happening there. It's a different variety of a carotenoid pigment. In this case, with the spoonbills, this bird eats crustaceans, like some shrimp and crabs and stuff. So how is it getting this brilliant color? It's getting it from carotenoids, but a little bit indirectly, right? Because it's gathering a stick for its nest. But what it does, when it eats these crustaceans, it's getting the carotenoids because, as I mentioned earlier, these shrimp and things ate the algae, which has carotenoids. Now, in the case of flamingos, they eat both brine shrimp and algae, so they're getting, it both ways, indirectly, and are one source removed. Here's some rosette spoonbill nestlings down in Florida. You see, they're still working on their color, so they'll be molting into brighter plumage as time goes on. So that kind of covers the dietary pigment of carotenoids. Now, there's another pigment called melanin, and we have it too. It colors our hair, our skin. Birds have it, and it's responsible for the black, gray, brown, and some yellows. So, the carotenoids are responsible for yellow, but some of the melanin also can produce the duller yellows. For example, there's some melanin in the red-winged blackbird's yellow part of its wing, but there's also some carotenoids. So you see, it's a big, pigment party. So, there's no hard and fast, like way that these are separated out across species or anything. But this is a great example of melanin in a house sparrow. So these are the kind of colors that melanin's going to produce, your dark chestnut, gray, and that black bib hasn't really come in yet, but, it's looking gorgeous. I love these earth tones. These are the colors that are good to wear when you're birding, so that you kind of blend in with, with the habitat, blend in with the leaf litter a little bit. So, you may be wondering, there's all these birds, and even house sparrows, may eat fruit and berries. They're eating carotenoids, but they're not, they're not using them as a pigment for their feathers. And why is that? I'm not sure. I can't really ask them, but it probably has to do with their foraging style, their survival. Maybe they need those carotenoids more for the immune boosting properties, all of the physiological needs of those pigments. And they, catbirds, in my experience, forage a lot on the ground, so it helps to be a darker, more muted color when you're on the ground. You don't want to be a bright yellow bird, because predators can get you and you're sticking out. So that could be why. But, these are pokeweed berries that the catbird's eating right now. And the catbird does have a little bit of color, but it's from, that is from melanin. The undertail coverts are reddish brown. So melanin also plays an important role in the strength of feathers. So, you see a lot of birds that are white, like the American white pelican, that has black in its wings on the edges. A lot of gulls have, black. The wood stork here has black on its wings. And this is because it helps, the feathers from getting too worn down. It helps in their flight. It's basically just strengthening their feathers. I mean, not all birds have it, like great egrets and things like that don't have black in their feathers. So once again, it could be a trade-off, that the great egret may need to be completely white because, it blends in and, certain habitats where it kind of, these bright, open habitats. Also, its feathers aren't subject to a lot of abrasion, like moving through the marsh or anything. And, who knows, maybe it just it just can't, deposit that melanin for a certain reason. It's using it for something else. So here's another picture of a wood stork. Had to show the smiling photo. These are taken, the wood stork photos are taken at St. Augustine Zoological Park, which has wild wood storks and spoonbills that come nest above the alligators because it's safe, because the alligators will get any, mammals or anything that try to rob the eggs and nestlings. So it's a cool place to visit if you ever get down there. Now, what about green, right? So when pigments combine, you get like, well, olive, not green. So olive, the olive back greenish of say an oven bird is when you get the melanin and then you get the carotenoid. yellow, and it combines to form this olive. So that's what's going on here. It does look brown in this case, but it is what's happening here is the combination of these two. And then you see that punk rock, orange crown, which probably is also a mix. It definitely has some carotenoid in it to be that bright color. So porphyrins, hey, I pronounced it right. I wasn't sure I could do that. Porphyrins are a pigment that is produced in the body, like melanin is produced in the body. And these are responsible for brown, reds, greens, and pinks in owls and bustards and nightjars, certain species, okay? And so like when you see an owl like this, it's that color is, definitely involves some porphyrins and also probably melanin. It also combines, but you may be wondering what's the deal with the pink, the fluorescent pink. So with the owls, what happens is when you shine a UV light on the owls, it shows fluorescent pink. So we can't see it. They probably can see something similar, but once again, we don't know exactly what they're seeing, but they're probably seeing something pretty psychedelic, it sounds like. So here's, these are burrowing owls here that I had, and you can see the camouflage function here. It's really blending in with the habitat. And here's a tropical screech owl. Now, all birds do actually use porphyrins for speckled eggs. So when you see these bird eggs with the speckles, that is what the pigment that's used for that. They're just not using them to color their feathers. Okay, so pigments, we have covered a lot with pigments. I hope you're doing okay out there. And we're moving on to structural color. As I mentioned before, this is interacting with light in various ways here. So this isn't the most, comprehensive image of a feather, but it's public domain. So, hey, I did the best I could. So this is a feather, the barbs kind of branch off, that middle part. And then there's things on the barbs called barbules, and that's what kind of zips the barbs together. Now, both the barbs and barbules have microstructures and nanostructures. Nanostructures are just smaller than microstructures, are super small. And these structures are made of keratin, melanin layers, and air pockets. Okay, so basically these structures interact with light to make some pretty cool colors. And the most interesting thing too is like when you think about bluebirds, eastern bluebirds, blue jays, indigo buntings, are they really blue? There is no such thing as a blue pigment or a blue feather in a bird. I know, it's crazy, right? So what is going on? So how does this blue jay get its blue? Well, it's got these nanostructures in its feathers made of keratin and the air pockets that I mentioned. And when light hits it, it basically scatters the light back at the wavelength of blue. So we're seeing a uniform blue. There's no iridescence here. I mean, it looks like it almost could be, but it's just uniform blue. Okay. And by uniform, I just mean it's not iridescent because obviously there's different, patterns of the blue here, but all of the blue here is because of the scattering of the light on when it hits the nanostructures. Okay. Same thing with the blue in the American kestrel. And you can see you've got a lot of melanin going on here as well. Now, when you look at this mallard, and you see the blue on that patch of the wing, these are called speculum. The patches are speculums. One's super bright blue, and the other is super dark blue, almost black. This is a different story. This is not producing blue in the same way that the blue jay or the indigo bunting or the bluebird is producing blue. This is iridescence. This depends on the angle of light. And I just love it when I get a photo like this to illustrate a concept like this. Also, you can see the iridescence on its head. There's the lights hitting it where you're getting some green there. So what's happening with iridescence is that, especially on the barbules of the feathers, of these birds, there are these microstructures and nanostructures that where light is passing through, and the wavelengths are separated. It's kind of like, prismatic art on a bird, living prismatic art on a feather. So when you think of a prism, when the light comes through, it bends because it's moving at different wavelengths. You can see the red, the peaks of the wave are longer than the purple that's down at the bottom. So when it bends, they come back out at different rates, and that's how you could see different colors, similar to what happens with a rainbow or bubbles. This is light refraction and the dispersion of the colors. So that's what we're seeing. And one of my favorite examples of it is the common grackle, because this is a bird you pretty much everywhere in the US has some type of grackle, and they all have this iridescence. So in some lights and shadows, they look just black, no colors whatsoever. But then when they hit the light, they start to look like something that is like from down in South America, from the tropics, right? People are like, what is that? I didn't know that could happen. I mean, I've seen them look so many different ways. So this is kind of an okay way, but look at this one. I love this from the back, the feathers, and I'm zooming in here on this, and this is all because of the light refraction and the iridescence. It's due to structures in the feathers. And this does depend on melanin in the background, because the melanin absorbs all the colors that are allowing, these other colors like the blues and purples to come through to our eyes. And then I think this is probably my favorite common grackle one. I mean, wow, I can't believe this. Look at this. So if you're looking at a grackle, I guess the advice is to kind of just like, move around to try to get, especially if you're photographing, try to get the good angles of the sun. Now, as I mentioned before, we love those hummingbirds. The hummingbirds are like the superstars of iridescence, right? But, fiery throated, these throats don't look too fiery, do they? And that kind of happened with my first book, Birding at the Bridge. I had a ruby-throated hummingbird, and the only photo I could get from my birding patch was where the throat was not illuminated. It was black. It was not, it had the wrong angle, but hey, it looked okay. But in this case, the throat looks a little dark. They still look awesome, right? But, if these birds turn a little bit, then you get the fiery throat. Okay, so this is Costa Rica, fiery-throated hummingbird. It was also raining a little bit, so it was super fun. Okay, so how do you get green? Let's see, how do you get green? So basically, most green you see in birds is a combination of the blue structural color we were just talking about, overlaid with yellow pigment from the carotenoids. Okay, so when you see that golden brown chlorophonia that I mentioned, that green has that blue structural like a blue jay has, but then it's got yellow pigment. And what I love about this is you can kind of see how this is going to happen, right? Because you see it has a blue collar. So maybe that blue collar probably extends under the green, right? It's there, but then the yellow from above the eye extends down over the blue, and that's what's creating the green. I mean, I think that makes sense. So yeah, I mean, it's just amazing how these colors form, right? Also, we go back to the Cuban toady, right, under the eye, kind of where it starts to get, well, actually, I think I have a zoom in on this. So see the blue there? So that's blue structural color, and it's probably moving all up over the head. It is. And then there's some yellow overlaid, which is making it green. And look at the yellow in front of the eye. So that yellow is probably extending over. And this is how this is all happening. And then you've got the carotenoids and the throat. And then look at those pink flanks. I mean, come on. This bird is so cute. I don't know. It might be the cutest bird ever. Okay, now, I think I mentioned earlier that some of these colors, like the reds and the yellows, most of them are from the diet, from carotenoids, but there are some exceptions. And I think there is only one exception. Parrots actually produce something called psittacofulvin. This is a pigment, but it's produced in their body. It produces yellow and red. So this is yellow-eared parrot of Colombia, and that ear is not from carotenoids. None of their plumage is from carotenoids, okay? It is from something they produce in their body. But they do have blue structural color. This bird doesn't have blue on it, but the green on it is a result of blue structural that's, underneath, and the yellow has overlaid on top of that. So we're seeing the same effect of the combination of the structural with the pigment in this case. Now, there is one bird, this is an evolving field. So, I don't know, maybe we could discover another bird with a green pigment, but there is one bird that does produce a green pigment. I did not take this photo. This is from Marilyn Bergman on Flickr, and was taken in a zoo. And I have seen this bird in a zoo before. It's a Turaco, and the pigment is called Turaco verdin. It's something to do with copper, but I don't have that information. But if you want to look into it, I know it's something to do with copper. So super interesting that this bird is making its own green, but no other birds can. Wild. Okay. So now that we know how this color is produced in the feathers, why? I mean, why? What is the function of all these colors, of all the camouflage, of the patterns, of white patches on the cheek, or any other, interesting things in bird plumage? Well, these have evolved over time, and a lot of these are from natural selection. And natural selection is, survival of the fittest. So, birds that, select on certain traits, and then they reproduce, and those traits get propagated in the gene pool, and then these traits evolve. So why would some of these birds be selecting for some of these traits? So camouflage is probably, I'd say, the biggest one. As much as we hate to admit it, there's a lot of brown birds out there, right? There's a lot of colorful birds, but there's a lot of, they call them little brown jobs, right? But, a lot of these birds are just amazing what they can do. This is a common potu in Panama. This is a bird I'd wanted to see for a long time. We finally saw it. And it blends in with the branch here. You can see this cryptic plumage, really. This is a nocturnal bird, and it basically rests during the day, and it doesn't want to get eaten by a predator or disturbed. I did get a video of this, believe it or not. They usually don't move during the day, but this one did. Common potu, one of my favorite birds. Another a partially nocturnal bird that a lot of us may be familiar with, and hopefully a lot of you have seen this, is the American woodcock. And it hangs out a lot in leaf litter, right? So, and it rests a lot during the day. So obviously it doesn't want to be a target for predators, and so it has a plumage that really, really blends in with that leaf litter. Now, the ovenbird, it's not a nocturnal species, but it also, it's helpful to blend into the leaf litter. It forages a lot for, insects under the leaves, so that coloring on the upper parts really help it blend in with the habitat and keep it safe. All right. Now, this bird is in Colombia. It's a cinnamon flycatcher, and I was with a guide. We were in the car leaving a forest. And as we're making a turn, it wasn't a busy road, like a, dirt road. I said, "Oh my gosh, look at the nest." And he goes, "Where?" I go, "Right there." "Where?" "Where?" And finally, I got him to see it, but I don't know how I saw this. I mean, it was pretty much out in the open, but it's so well camouflaged. I guess my eyes just landed in the right spot, or I was in like super birding mode or whatever. But, as you can see, these birds, especially when they're nesting, they're vulnerable. And this kind of plumage really keeps them safe during nesting, during foraging, during resting, many reasons. Now, I've talked a lot about the muted, the brown colors and all this, but believe it or not, a lot of these really colorful birds, they have evolved this plumage because it's camouflage as well. How in the world is this bird camouflaging? Okay. Well, this bird's right out in the open right now. It's like engaged in courtship. There's a female nearby. This is in Costa Rica. So it's like in all its glory. But this is up in the cloud forest, but when it, goes deeper into the forest, it's actually going to blend in with this plumage because of the epiphytes that you see there. There's red in the epiphytes. There's, the green leaves with the light really blends in. It's hard to believe. If you don't believe me, I have a better example because I don't have a picture of a quetzal that's like deep in the woods. But this bay-headed tanager that we saw earlier looks super bright. Like, how could this be camouflage? But when you see it here, right? Like, um, when it was in Panama, like someone was pointing out this bird. I didn't see it. It just really blended in. So surprisingly, a lot of these bright colors, especially in these cloud forest, rainforest habitats, really do function as camouflage. Now, another form of camouflage is this disruptive patterning that you see a lot in plovers. So see the bands on its neck and chest there? That kind of breaks up the silhouette of a bird. So if a predator's looking around, it's kind of confusing. It's confusing for us too, right? When we're looking, on a beach or a parking lot, and we're like, what is that? What's that bright? We see the bright color sticking out, but it doesn't really look like a bird. So this can also help as a protective mechanism. There's also something called counter shading, which we see all the time. You know how most birds have the dark upper parts and light underparts, right? Why is that? Well, this is also evolved through natural selection, survival of the fittest, because when predators are flying over the top, the dark upper parts of the bird make it harder to see when the bird's looking down. And yes, believe it or not, these black-crowned night herons have predators, not too many, but a red-tailed hawk has been known to attack one before, and some, raptors do. But you see it in kingbirds, in juncos, flycatchers, kingbird's a type of flycatcher, but all sorts of birds. The other reason for these colors is for territorial defense. So one example is the northern flicker has these really vibrant yellow feathers, right? Like there's yellow shafts on their feathers and also on their tail. And one thing that these birds do is when they're staking out their territory, they don't fight, but they do kind of interact. They do a dance and they show off, especially their tail feathers. And they don't make contact. It's pretty, it's non-violent, it's great. But then one gives up, okay? And it's usually because the color has something to do with it, that I'm stronger, I'm more fit because of my color, I can forage better, I can deposit pigments better in my feathers, whatever. So that is one example of the function of the color. So when males are like staking out territories. And we see this a lot with mockingbird. This isn't, white, the white patches. How many of you have ever, walked up to a lawn and it's owned by the northern mockingbird and they fly right up to you and flash those white patches? You can't miss it, even if it's out of the corner of your eye. It's a startle effect. It's startling us. It'll startle other predators, okay? And other mockingbirds that are trying to invade that territory. Okay. Another thing it does with those white patches is this raising of the wings. There's various theories. This could be for territorial defense. It's also used in courtship and could also be used in foraging to scare up insects. So yeah, like look at those white patches. Now, another reason for this coloring is recognizing species, right? So, when you have to meet someone, like when I go meet Mina, I know, Mina, I know what you look like, but you may say to me when we're meeting in the patch, I'll be wearing, a blue shirt. I have my glasses on, and I would say, okay, I've got the big camera and I have a backpack on, something like that. So, that helps us say, oh, well, I'm looking for you. That's who I'm looking for, right? So in the birds, for them to be successful and survive, they need to reproduce and they need to find mates. Okay. Just like we do. So how do they do that with all these, there's little brown jobs, there's all these birds, a lot of yellow, warblers with yellow and all this. And a lot of these birds travel in mixed flocks, especially warblers. So yes, the yellow rump of the yellow rump warbler is used in species recognition for these birds. Now, it's not the only bird that has a yellow rump. Magnolia warbler is another, but it definitely helps. And magnolia has a lot of other field marks that would make it easy to distinguish. Now, as you can imagine, this is also, there's sexual dimorphism and different colors in birds. So, to choose a mate, you need to know, hey, are you like, can I mate with you? Is this going to work? Are you male, female, whatever? So, say this male downy woodpecker sees another downy woodpecker way across, the lawn, and it's looking for a red patch on the back, on the nape, and oh, no red patch. Okay, I'm going to go see if I can, see if I can attract this female. So, it saves resources, it saves time for them to be able to kind of ascertain if this is, if this is a potential mate. So talking about finding potential mates, the other aspect of the of evolution is sexual selection. This is selecting for reproductive success, because you need to keep that species alive. You're going to need to have lots of young, successful nests. You're going to have to defend your territories. Okay. And a lot of these colors are attractive. They're eye-catching. They, could be distracting, but, also attracting, who knows? So it's basically a choose me thing. So one example is the cedar waxwings. So older males have more of these wax tips. Some have none. But older in a songbird doesn't mean that's not the most potential mate, because they're young, they're still young. Songbirds don't live that long. So it says, I'm more mature. I've lived a long time. I've survived. I've defended my territories. I get a lot of berries. I'm good at depositing these carotenoids. Okay. So these birds with the more waxy tips they have higher reproductive success. Now, the yellowtail so far is not associated with anything about that. So the females are probably not choosing males on tail at all, mostly just waxy tips. Same thing with the pinker the rosette spoonbill, the better, right? This means it has better foraging skills and or access to food. So, females may choose the pink, brighter pink males, and these birds have evolved to be super bright pink. Same with house finch. So house finch females definitely prefer not only redder, more brilliant and saturated red color, but more red. Okay. So if the red extended further down and was brighter, they like that. That's definitely been proven. But it's not always the case. It varies among species, right? So in eastern bluebirds, the vibrancy of the blue has nothing to do with it. The females do not care. They did a study, and the blue did not affect the choice of the females. So it really, doesn't work the same for everybody. Now, this is a display, definite, sexual selection here, showing off the epaulettes, the shoulder pads, if you want to call them, red-winged blackbird that has those carotenoid and a little bit of carotenoid and melanin in the yellow part. And this actually was taken right before they made it. I didn't know. I saw this. It was low to the ground. I'm like, whoa, I got a picture of it, and it jumped down. The female was like really receptive to it, was really impressed with this display. And then they made it. And of course, there was a nest, a few weeks later. This is the female here doing the nest building, and also has mostly melanin going on, but also a little bit of carotenoid pigment in the shoulders there. Now, I mentioned the Andean cock of the rock. This is also that red color in the head is super important for attracting females. These birds lek, which means they get together, a bunch of males get together, and they kind of display. They dance and they show off, and for the females, and the female kind of chooses, and they choose the male to mate with. And the reason, see the color, that it's like really grayish and black, that it's thought that kind of accentuates the head. Like it really says, look at the top, look at my head, my whatever that is, over the bill. This is what I want to accentuate. And that other part kind of goes into the background. It doesn't distract the female from making this choice based on this vibrant color. Okay. So these, in sexual selection, these are called, referred to as honest traits. So what's an honest trait? Like, an honest trait is, I'm red because I have enough food, I also have enough, health that I can use carotenoids both for my immune system and to, antioxidants, and also I can show off this plumage. I have a lot going on and I'm fit and healthy. That's what the honest trait means. Also, in certain species, like it can really signal that something about the bird, like redder cardinals tend to take better care of their young. They're more attentive at the nest. So maybe females have noticed this. I don't know, but they also generally are fitter and healthier. And there is an exception that I'm going to show you in a bit. So that thing I mentioned where, these birds, are able to use carotenoids both for their physiological processes and the color shows that they have this allocation trade-off. They have enough to do both. Whereas some birds, like we talked about the gray catbird, it could be for camouflage, but it also could be that it needs, all that the carotenoids for, to allocate to physiological processes. But this varies across birds, but this is kind of what's going on and why different birds have different colors and distributions of colors. So if you look at a bird like this orange-breasted bunting in Oaxaca, I mean, this could blend in. I'm not really sure if this is camouflage, maybe, but it looks pretty brilliant to me. But obviously, this is probably attractive to a mate. And if this bird can get these colors going on and be in good physical health and survive and defend its territories, it's probably showing that it can allocate resources on both ends here. So very good mate choice. So, we wanted to find out if females choose mates based on beauty alone. That was kind of the title of this. Is this just evolutionary advantage, or, is it also beauty? Now, Darwin really struggled with this, but he came to the conclusion that yes, they do select on beauty alone, because he came up with natural selection, as did Wallace. In the 1850s, they actually kind of came up with it at the same time, but Darwin had been working on it much longer. But Darwin said, what about, he said natural selection, survival of the fittest makes sense, but what about the peacock? What do we do with the peacock? That doesn't make any sense. That's not, it's open to predators. It doesn't make sense to put all those resources into that tail and those feathers. So he kind of settled on sexual selection for just beauty alone, the aesthetic sense. But Arthur Russell Wallace said, nope, I'm not buying that. So really for much of the 20th century, it was basically Darwin's theory of sexual selection on beauty alone was refuted, and no, we don't agree with this. There has been a resurgence recently, most notably with ornithologist Richard Prum from Yale, that it's possible that these birds could be selecting on beauty alone. And when you think about this, there's an Anna's hummingbird that actually, when it's doing courtship flights, it angles its gorget, the neck feathers towards the sun so that the female can see the iridescence. So, I mean, like this bird must know that the iridescence is going to be attractive to the female. Is it signaling an honest trait, health and fitness, or is it just, wow, that's awesome. I can't deny that, I can't resist this, There's another picture of Anna's hummingbird. You can see how the color changes there. But what about the peacock, right? So there obviously are some aesthetic choices going on in birds. There's got to be to some degree, but like what's the deal with the peacock? So Fisher had come up with this idea of a runaway trait. So basically, say a female has a slight preference for the peacock with the long tail. Okay, then so the peacocks with the long tail are more successful, and then their offspring may produce a male that has a longer tail, or a female that prefers longer tails. So it kind of co-evolves in this feedback loop where there's a bunch of females that like longer tails and a bunch of males with longer tails, and it runs away. Like it gets kind of out of control, but it stops at the point where it affects survival. So that's the idea of a runaway trait. Are there any dishonest traits? I mean, there may be a couple. So there was a study on crimson-backed tanager, this family that this bird is in, and they have a lot of carotenoid pigments, but they are deceptively accentuating the red on their rump with structural feathers as well. There's structures on their feathers that are making the red more highly saturated. And that, so the females may be thinking, oh, they're eating a lot very well. They're allocating the pigments to their feathers, but they're kind of deceiving with a little bit of structure on their feathers there to accentuate the red. Now, this is the coolest, like, thing that I've been kind of alluding to, that there's this study that was done in 2022 by the Wilson Journal. It was in the Wilson Journal of Ornithology. And I'm calling it urban deception. So basically, the Moro's honeysuckle that I mentioned earlier that colored the cedar waxwing's tail orange is available in a lot of urban habitats. And cardinals eat it. And when they eat it, they don't have to convert the yellow carotenoid to red. It's just red. Whoa. So what does that mean? Well, I mean, it costs less, for them to do it. It's easier. And it also means that they're deeper red, even if they're not the best foragers, right? So in the study, they showed that the weight of a lot of these super red birds in urban environments was less than you would expect for a healthy bird. Okay. So there's kind of a dishonest trait. I don't know that it's not the bird's fault, right? But really, really interesting. Okay. So when we're talking about sexual dichromatism, this is a difference between males and females. You notice a lot of birds have different plumages. One example is black-throated blue warbler, the male's on the right, females on the left, very muted. And there's something interesting about the sexual dichromatism that I wanted to mention. So it's associated with extra pair mating, which sounds crazy, right? But these birds are socially monogamous. So they choose a pair to have a nest with and a little family. But they actually are great at extra pair mating and paternity as well, the males. So, and it's shown that the brilliant colors in the males evolve so that they can be successful at running off and mating with another female really quickly and then getting back to their regular pair. So here's a yellow warblers exhibit this. I mean, they're not too, different in colors. The males have the reddish streaks, but they definitely do it too. Also do indigo buntings, male and female here. I do want to mention molting. I anticipate there may be questions about it, but I'll just touch on it. Yes, every bird has the basic molt, which is once a year, but some birds have evolved a second molt, and it's thought that this is to produce those vibrant colors right before mating season. So on the left, we've got the male scarlet tanager. That's the brilliant red with black wings in the spring, but then after breeding season, it molts into a more muted color in the fall. Okay. Now, some birds may seem like they're changing colors, like the cardinals get redder in spring, but they only have one molt. The reason they get redder is because the tips of their feathers wear off, because when they have a fresh molt, it's more kind of muted and beigey. And then it's revealed, the red is revealed in spring. You notice this happens with starlings too. Starlings have the spots like snowflakes over them in fresh plumage, but they only have one molt a year. So what happens is the feather tips wear off, and come spring breeding season, they're a glossy black. So talking about beauty, and or evolutionary advantage, it's all a mix. I mean, bird color really shows us evolution. It's not just about survival. It's also about this constant tension between staying alive and successfully reproducing. And really all of these vibrant and cryptic plumages, they just remind us nature, it does involve both function and beauty, really. And there's a resplendent quetzal, and it fits into its cavity where it nests by putting the tail over its body and over its head there. I did use a lot of references in here. Obviously, you can't read this now, but this is going to be posted online. So if you're interested, there's a lot of great stuff that I read and prep for this. And please do get my book, Find More Birds from Aesop's Fable, or your favorite local bookstore, or check it out at your local library. And I'm going to turn it over to Mina for questions.
Oh my gosh, that was even better than I ever expected it could be. And I want to remind everybody that Heather she's always been an expert, but she just learned about all the colors and all of this information just for this program. So we are going to get into questions. I want to remind you to put your questions in the Q&A. Sometimes the chat goes by too quickly for me to pay attention to. So please put your questions in the Q&A. Heather has offered to stay an extra few minutes to make sure we get to as many questions as possible. So I'm going to get right into it. Obviously, everybody's loving it. I have to say, like the whole beauty thing, if Pierce Brosnan was to walk in today, I'd be like, yep, I'm done. I'm good. I'm going after that guy.
Mm.
So I can see where you talked about the beauty and how that could have an effect. So Cheryl asked the first question: why do female birds not turn the same color if eating the same diet?
Great question. So the distribution of the pigments, of those carotenoid pigments and melanin, is under hormonal control. So you can imagine the different hormones, there's estrogen and testosterone. It's under the control of the hormones, and that also is a result of the genes. So the genes kind of control how the hormones are going to distribute those colors amongst the sexes.
Mm-hmm. And just a quick reminder again, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A, which is a button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. I wanted to ask about that, Heather, about the evolutionary thing, because we didn't touch on it too much, but like, it seems to me the color is more genetic versus environmental. How is that, how is it a 50-50? What do you think?
Well, I mean, it's all genetic, because even if they're eating their diet, it's the genes that are going to decide where those pigments are distributed.
Mm-hmm.
Now, okay, I guess it isn't all diet, because in the case of the feathers wearing off, right? Um, like even in the birds that have the carotenoid pigments, that is a cause of just the feather wear and tear. Now, but yeah, and environmental factors. I mean, in the other birds that have their own pigments, like the parrots and the turricows, I mean, that's all genes. I mean, that's kind of out of my wheelhouse, but it's definitely, they've evolved their through reproduction to distribute these pigments in all these various ways for, basically because they've selected on it
Mm-hmm.
in mates and surviving.
Thank you. Meg asks, we once saw scarlet ibis in Southwest Florida. Do you know how they get that brilliant color, which is rare in the ibis family?
The scarlet ibis or scarlet ibis, I mean, that's a species. They get it from their diet. Those are carotenoid pigments, very similar to the flamingos and the rosette spoonbills. So, and they're foraging in water, so they're going to be eating, a lot of crustaceans and getting the benefits of that algae that the crustaceans are eating.
Mhm. I wanted to tell everybody that I will send the last slide to everybody in my recap email so that you have all of the resources that Heather used to create this presentation. Jennifer asked, could the UV colors the birds see promote whether the bird is ready to mate?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure, but I would guess so. Because I mean, it could be that the hormones are controlling distribution of the UV at certain times.
Mhm.
I would not doubt that, but I am not 100% sure. Great question. Yeah.
Okay. And I'm going to totally mash this word, but citicolofulvin, which shows when a parrot blushes.
Oh, like the rosy faced parrots. Yeah, any red or yellow in a parrot is going to be from that pigment, and I'm not going to try to pronounce it again. You did a great job, Mina.
The slower the better. Aaron asks, how do scientists figure this out? Do they dissect dead birds? I mean, what is the scientific method here?
Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of studies. So yeah, I mean, they can look at specimens of birds and investigate what's in their diet, what's in their stomachs. I imagine there's some genetics involved, and I mean, it probably just runs the gamut. There's also some studies where they do have like put fake color on birds, unfortunately. So like with house finch, there was one of those, or there was one where they colored an American goldfinch male red instead of yellow, and none of them, the females just did not even go near them. So, I mean, and this is, like I said, it's still an active field of research. So it's really exciting. And I definitely like just the resources that Mina's going to send you. I'm pretty sure I used more than is in that list. So, but use that as a springboard to just go wild on this, because it's like really interesting to look at all these studies. Yeah.
I, Heather and I always tell her this. I feel like she's my soul sister because I feel like I would totally nerd out on this as well. um, Osmana says the cardinal seems to have brownish males on the they seem to be brownish on the body, contrary to the bright red we usually see. Why is that? I think you had
The
mentioned it, the cardinal.
so I didn't show the female cardinal, but the females are beige brownish. Okay. They have a little bit of red in the feathers, but one thing I did show was the cardinal in fresh plumage is not really super brilliant red. It's got a little bit of maybe grayish beige on it, not as much as a female, but that wears off. But yeah, I mean, so what you may be seeing is a female cardinal actually.
Right, but you had mentioned that the male cardinal molts off in the spring and becomes that brighter shade as well.
Well, but that's not because of molt. So remember, it molts once a year just to refresh its plumage. But the brighter color is not the result of a molt. The brighter color is a result of the feather edges that are beigeish and grayish wearing off and revealing the bright red color.
Got it.
I know it's a lot to remember, but
That was a lot. You got through a lot in a short time. Barbara asks, what is the rose-breasted rosebeak eating to give them their color?
yeah, so they're eating some kind of fruits. Also, I mean, they have those big bills. They eat a lot of fruits and seeds. Also, if they happen to eat insects, that would also provide some, but it's mostly, seeds and fruits.
Hmm. And Hillary asks, are color patterns in part based on geography, like different climates?
I mean, yeah, I mean the evolution of like there's the snowy owl, it's white blend in, the ptarmigans blend in with their environment. Some of the birds I mentioned, like I mean, I guess so climate, weather, right? So we're not talking habitat, so more climate, but I mean snow is kind of like weather, right? So that can affect it a little bit. Also temperature, thermoregulation is something I didn't really talk about much, but the bill of the keel-billed toucan is basically that one I showed you in the beginning. That's used to regulate heat. So it can dissipate heat through the bill when it's too hot, and it can actually warm itself up by bringing in heat from the bill. So, but the color of the bill doesn't necessarily have anything to do with that. It's more the size of the bill. But interesting question. I'm gonna look more into that.
Okay. And also, I don't know if you touch on this too much, but is there an evolutionary advantage of the different colors for migration?
For migration. Well, yeah, I mean, because when the birds get on their territories, so they're migrating, and then when they get there, they sing from a perch and they're advertising, this is mine. The bright colors can ward off males. Imagine you're a bird and you're looking for a place to build a nest, and you're looking and you see, oh, there's one on top of that tree, there's one on top of that tree. I gotta find one where there's not a male, so I don't want to get into a fight. You know what I mean? So migratory birds tend to have more of that color and more of the sexual dichromatism differences between males and females.
Mhm. It sounds very like West Side Story, like, this is mine, don't touch it.
Yeah, I mean it's very dramatic. Yeah, the bird world
Mhm.
is super dramatic.
I love it. Paula asks, what about leucistic birds? Leucistic?
Yeah, great question. So leucistic birds have a mutation where they can't, it's a defect in their ability to produce melanin pigment.
Mhm.
And basically, they're not completely white, but they'll have patches of white here and there. And it may also, I'm not sure if it affects the distribution of carotenoids or not, but if it, in contrast to an albino bird is all white, and this is because it can't produce melanin at all.
Mm.
So basically, all the colors getting thrown back to the viewer. But yeah, leucistic birds are partially like white and patchy. Yeah, great question.
Martha asks, how do male goldfinches get darker in the winter and brighten up in the spring? Is that molting thing? I keep going back to that because I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah. So they do have the two molts, right? So they'll be looking more like females around this time. There's still some that are bright yellow, but they're kind of moving more into that, duller plumage. And
Mhm.
then before breeding season, they'll do a molt to become that brilliant, canary yellow and get those carotenoids distributed around their feathers as their feathers are growing.
Oh, it's just fascinating, like the how. evolution and genetics and environment all play together to create this amazing thing that's going on in our backyards sometimes.
I know,
Um,
I know.
and I mean, you do a lot of your photography in your backyard at the Brooklyn Bridge Park. So you know that, I mean, your pictures are amazing. Follow Heather on TikTok. She's really got it down.
I haven't been posting as much on TikTok, but yeah, Instagram, because especially during migration, but yeah, but you can look at all my old videos and they're great. They're
They
there.
are great. William asks, what is the best way to spot birds in the tree lines? Right now, I'm trying to photo a hawk or an egret.
Birds in the tree lines. So yeah, I mean, like Cooper's hawks hide in the trees, but you can, other hawks often perch out on posts. So
Hmm.
I would anywhere you are, check posts, edges of buildings, tops of buildings. And that's where you could find, I found bald eagles that way, red-tailed hawks. And yeah, I mean, a good way to detect, hawks that are hiding in the trees is if you see a bunch of birds and they freak out and fly away or up into the trees. And that's kind of like the hawk signal. There's some predator around. So that's a good way to detect. And basically then just kind of look for these silhouettes
Hmm.
of, these big raptors, because the hawks are pretty big. Yeah. And
James,
egrets you asked about too. The egrets, well, I mean, there's breeding colonies of egrets that sometimes you'll be driving down, like in Florida, you'll see like tons of white in trees, and it's a bunch of nests of, they're colonial nesters, so they all nest together. And yeah, and in marshes, they're very still, egrets. So I always say look for movement when you're looking for birds, but if you're at a wetland in a marsh, you just kind of look for these, scan the landscape systematically, in a line so that you can look for these, birds just being super still.
James says male baby cardinals start out brown and then turn red adorably. Is that a form of cardinal puberty?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could call it that. Yeah, I mean, the young are in many species are often, their plumage is purposely camouflage colors, because they're more susceptible to predators. But yeah, they have natal down. That's called natal down. They move into adult plumage. So they have more stages until they reach an adult, and then they'll just be doing that one multi-year.
Ada says, when we talk about beauty, isn't that ultimately rooted in survival for birds? I'm going to clarify that.
I don't know. I mean, because like what about vultures? I think they're beautiful, but a lot of people don't think vultures are beautiful.
Hmm.
But when they have, their heads have no feathers on them, and it's because when they're ripping apart carrion, like dead animals and stuff, they don't want to have to clean, they can't really clean their head feathers, right? So this is a way to like they also defecate on their legs to stay cool. So I don't know if a lot of people think that bird's beautiful, but they're surviving pretty well. So maybe not always.
Got it. Okay. So Kirsten asked, and I think she took one of your courses. I think I saw that earlier in the chat. Hi, Heather. I'm reading Richard Prum's book, and it has this great feminist angle. Do you think that female birds dictate how birds evolve?
Yeah, I mean, I love that angle. You're right. And it was the whole idea that how dare, Wallace and all these, ornithologists and in the 20th century, kind of refute the idea that females could be responsible for evolution. And that was kind of one of the reasons that there's no way that females are driving this. But it's pretty obvious that in a lot of cases they are, right? Because I mean, the males are doing everything they can to attract them, and it's their choice. And so many times you see these females just walk away. How many times when you've seen these males, pigeons especially, trying so hard, and the females, so they are definitely playing a role in this, as we saw with when I talked about the peacock. They chose the long tail, and that kind of coevolution of the runaway trait happened. So yeah, I mean, it's super super interesting. Enjoy.
Mhm. Vanessa asks, I'm so curious that if birds can see more than we can, do we even accurately understand the entire complexity of their coloration?
No, I don't think so. I mean, Probably not.
No, I think it's probably a lot more complex than we'll ever know, right? Because
Yeah,
it's
because
constantly changing.
yeah, I mean, not only can they see the UV, but they can see more color, more blues, more greens. They can discern colors much. I don't know what they're seeing. It's amazing. Who knows? Yeah, we can't, unfortunately.
Ronan says, what is protective about black and feathers or black feathers as you showed?
What's protective? So
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly which photo you're referring to. So I did talk about the that they strengthen the melanin black pigment strengthens feathers. So like it's in gulls and American pelicans, when they're flying, and just it helps with feather wear and tear in between molts. But I also mentioned the gray catbird, which has the black cap and the gray body, and that could be a form of kind of staying under the radar camouflage because they forage low, but it could also be because they need to use carotenoids for other, their physiological processes, and their allocation trade-off doesn't allow for that. They have to
Mhm.
put it all into their physiological processes.
Mhm. I think that's interesting because, in the military, they use black as like camouflage. So, and green, of course, like if they're in the woods. So like black seems sort of almost something that works
Well,
for humans.
it's anti-reflective, and Mina, you're the best. I'm so glad you brought this up because there are studies that kind of point to the cedar waxwing mask
Hmm.
having that use.
Hmm.
Anti-glare when foraging, high at the top of trees with berries.
You're welcome. I had a question about that thing a little while ago. I'm going to look for it. But let's see. Carla asks, does the female choose her mate all the time, or does the male ever get to choose the female?
Great question. So there are some species where the females are more ornate and they try to attract the males. Phalaropes are one example. They're a type of shorebird. It's in very few species, but yeah, it does happen. And in that case, also the females are not only trying to attract mates, but they get into territorial disputes. They have elevated levels of testosterone. So, it's a sex role reversal in the bird world.
Hmm. So I found that question. Are those tips actually waxy, or are they tiny feathers?
I think they're waxy. I've never seen it, but yeah, I think it is wax. Yeah.
Okay. And when you talked about the male bird having the one nest, then running over to get another nest, and then coming back, do they take care of both nests?
No,
Just
I
the
don't think
one?
so. Yeah, yeah, it's extra pair. Yeah. So, but the bird, yeah, I don't know all the intricacies of how that works, but I don't think they're taking care of the other nest. They're just like kind of, mating with them and then going back to the pair. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. Yeah.
Deadbeat dad.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
who takes care of the birds in the other nest then?
Well, I mean, the other bird could be the female could be sitting on a nest and her mate is away and the other one sneaks in, and
Mm,
so it could be that original partner is kind of gonna be, hey, how'd this happen? Like, I don't know. I mean, I do really notice a lot of red-winged blackbirds nests, and there's only like a couple males and there's like a ton of nests, so they could potentially be moving around and doing two nests at once. I there's so much. I really I just don't know everything about birds. I can't, but I mean, so yeah, I'm not a great question, but I think in a lot of cases they don't they're not involved, but they may. I'm not going to say that they are never involved in taking care of the other. Yeah.
Heather, you probably know way more than most of us. So thank you for that. I'm just going to get through a few more questions if you don't mind. I know we're getting to 8:15 and I don't want to keep you too long. But William asked, does the green heron make its mohawk stand on edge when it's hunting, or does that happen automatically? What's the purpose?
Yeah, so great question. So the herons can make that happen. They can control the way their feathers go. And I don't think they do it during hunting. I know they do it during like as an aggression tactic when they're feeling threatened or surprised. I've seen that happen. But yeah, I mean, great question. So not all birds can control the movement of their feathers, but those birds can on their heads. Yes.
And Christine asked, what causes color in the beaks and the feet?
Yeah, so those are primarily carotenoids as well. So yeah, I mean that's a lot of bright red, yellow colors
Mhm.
in those features. Yes.
Melanie asked, what are your thoughts about the rusty snowy owl in Michigan that's made the news recently?
I don't even know about it. I am out of the loop, because I've been studying too
Oh,
hard for this presentation. I don't know what's in. I know that there are cases of birds that take on color. And now coming back to the environmental factors, I was wrong, Mina, because there are birds that when they forage in, like, say, reddish dirt or some kind of environmental thing, they can get tinted. We see this all the time with pollen, right? Like if like hummingbirds might have, yellow. So yeah, I mean they can definitely get, and this could be the case with the snowy owl. I don't know if it's a pigment thing or if it's because of something that it got dyed with
mhm. I
due
think your
to the
Wi-Fi is
environment.
starting to struggle a little bit, so we'll get through a couple more, and then we'll have to call it a night. But we get this question every single time. What kind of camera do you use to take these amazing pictures?
Yeah, I have still not made the switch to mirrorless. I have a Canon EOS 7D DSLR and a 100 to 400 millimeter lens.
Hmm. It's gorgeous, gorgeous. Do you ever take pictures with like just your phone?
No, I have an Android, and people always say, "Oh, can you take pictures of, like portraits?" And really, the iPhones are awesome for your regular photos of people and landscapes. iPhone's great. I have an Android, so it just doesn't. It doesn't really take good. It's an older one, so it doesn't take good photos, unfortunately.
Mhm. What's up with blue jays and cardinals that lose their head feathers and not much else? That's from Ellen.
Yeah. I mean, it's part of molt. It also could be parasites. So one thing I didn't mention was, ectoparasites, parasites that live outside the body. Melanin also can protect against that. And so, it could be that they have those ectoparasites and their feathers aren't healthy and they're losing them. But, they'll probably grow those feathers back. I mean, they're going to be okay. So I know they can look weird. It could be a part of molt or about the parasites.
Mhm. And I know we have a few more questions, but I'm going to make this one the last one because it is getting a little bit late. Um, it's it's a great one. What goes on in the brain that enables birds to recognize others in the same species? And I have to ask this question because I'm like, how do we know? I mean, like, we assume that we know people that are human, right? So that we the same species. So how do I would imagine birds too? Like they just know.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. So, there's a lot of things we don't notice. So, like gray catbirds, the male and females look alike, right? But to us, but there are probably little features. There are little features. It could be the way they sing. It could be a certain alarm call. It could be the way they fly, or there are some, there's a feather sticking out somewhere, or that there's some little plumage variation. They can detect these um, to tell, and actually that's like to tell who their mate is. I was that the question? Was it who their mate is, or the same
No,
species?
the same species.
Oh, I went off on the mate thing. So same species, like yeah, so the same plumage patterns, right? Like I mentioned the yellow rump warbler. Oh, okay, it's got a yellow rump. The plumage kind of looks like mine. That's my species. Um, but there's also hybridization, right? So they can get confused sometimes.
Mhm.
It happens a lot in ducks.
Huh.
Yeah. So various factors involved. Yes.
What? Well, is this something that they learn in the nest as well? Like, they're in the nest, their parents, like our parents talk to us about, don't go running in the street type of thing. Um, is it something that is passed on from generation to generation, that kind of knowledge? Or is it more
To know what's
innate?
to know our species, to know what species we are.
Yeah, or just how to survive in the wild once you're out of the
Oh,
nest.
how to survive. Yeah, I mean, there's it depends on the bird. Like ducks, they hatch and they're out foraging right away with the mother.
Mhm.
They kind of can forage, they can forage on their own, but they need the mother to kind of protect them, so they're not going to survive, but they can but songbirds are they're altricial. The others are precocial. The songbirds are altricial, and they can't survive without their parents. So they're born with it. They don't have a lot of feathers, if any, and they're helpless. So these birds, yeah, they learn how to forage once they get out of the nest. They learn to forage, they learn to sing. Some songbirds, most notably the flycatchers, their songs, some of the flycatchers are instinctual, so they don't learn the songs. But like my white-throated sparrow, my favorite bird, right? They learn the song. So yeah, you can kind of hear it. Like when they're growing up, you notice birds aren't foraging as well. They're following their parent around, and the parents kind of showing them what to do. You can really see that. It's breeding season's almost over. There's still a few young catbirds and goldfinch and cardinals around. So yeah, you might have to wait till next summer, but to see that.
Right. Well, now we're getting into migration season, so that it's ev- every year. So,
Yeah,
Heather,
they're
this
heading back.
another amazing, amazing conversation. I have learned so much. I think a lot of people here have, and we had some really wonderful questions. So I really appreciate you taking the time to answer as many as we could get to. And just thank you. I look forward to seeing you in October. I'm going
Thank you so much.
birding with Heather. So for you weren't here at the beginning, I'm
Yes.
going birding with Heather in October in real life. So, but who knows? Maybe we'll have you back again, and maybe someday we'll have that coffee book table.
I hope so. And I want to thank everyone that signed on, was here tonight. And yeah, feel free to reach out with questions. I'm at hwbirds@gmail.com. I think Mina is going to share that as well. And yeah, thank you so much for being here. And thank you, Mina, for not only inviting me, but for suggesting this awesome topic.
Well, as you learned a lot, you shared a lot. So I appreciate it. But happy birding, everybody. We'll see you hopefully again soon.
Good night, everyone. Thanks.